you've spoken in the past of being aware of objects and then being aware of being aware of objects. My question is, in the natural state, is one aware of being aware at all times, or is that simply? What can you expand on that?
Well, being aware of being aware, it means being aware of awareness, right? But we can be aware of awareness with objects or without objects. If there are no objects, then there is awareness without objects. If there are objects, there is awareness with objects. It's always awareness, no matter what. Whatever we see at any moment, it's awareness, or reality, or Brahman.
But the idea of being, I mean, I've forgotten under what context you brought up the idea of, well, there's being aware of the table and then being aware of the table. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. That the difference that you have made in the past, that you've spoken about in the past, the difference between those two.
Yes, because I use this argument to say that there are two different experiences. One, to be aware of the table, and the other one, to be aware that we are aware of the table.
Yeah. So my question is,
to be aware that we are aware, there is no table there. There is only awareness.
so when you're aware of being aware of the table, there's no table there?
Exactly. It happens after the table.
I thought it was more like, oh, I'm aware that I'm aware of the table. You know, like,
I see what you mean. No, because what you mean then is something else. It's a perfume. And the perfume is the experience of a body-mind which is relieved from the burden of ignorance in the presence of, because if objects are present,
you say that again, it's a body-mind that's
in ignorance or in knowledge, awareness is the same. No matter what, whatever is perceived is awareness itself. It appears in the form of objects or as pure awareness. That's when we go to the center, if you will.
So what I'm talking about is something different. You're saying that it's more like the perfume of rather.
The perfume.
Could, I'm aware that I'm aware of this, and other times I'm just, going about my business and
Yes. The perfume is what happens in the presence of objects, however, in the absence of objects related to ignorance. The objects related to ignorance, which are thoughts and bodily sensations, kind of hide the natural state.
So, is it true that most people, let's say they're busy building a car or writing a software program or whatever, I wouldn't think that ignorance is, unless they're afraid that they're not going to meet a deadline or something like that, they're not, the sense of being separate or sense of it's I would guess it's not present because you're completely absorbed in whatever you're doing. what would you call that? Would you call that something that's a natural state, or what would you call that?
Well, in Sanskrit, there's the word Sabikalpa samadhi. Sabikalpa.
Oh, that's Sabikalpa.
That's it would mean that the ignorance has not been destroyed by a glimpse, and but because the absorption in the object is complete, the objects that are related to ignorance are temporarily, for the time being, not present. But they come with a vengeance once the activity has stopped. As long as ignorance has not been destroyed by a glimpse, the object of ignorance are constantly alive, fueled. It doesn't mean that in ignorance we don't experience moments of happiness and moments of relief, if you will. It's just that they are very rare.
But a person that understands or has had the glimpse to some extent, then and has matured in that, does he or she see the world as being consciousness? Or do they go about their life as before, just simply with the understanding that, there is no Santa Claus, there is no separate self. Just like it's an understanding that is,
But this understanding, when we go back to it, instantaneously removed any residual objects of ignorance.
I'm just wondering if it's is it a permanent feature in time, or is it just when it kind of pops up, yes, this is true, this is all consciousness. I'm just trying to understand. Well, maybe it's different for different people.
We have to first to understand that there is no such a thing as a liberated human being. That's the first thing. Every question that is predicated upon this belief, right? Consciousness is free. It's also free to play the game of ignorance through human body minds, right? That's the absolute level. On the relative level, there is a seeming continuity in the world, in the body, in the mind, over time, from one moment to the other, right? The body is aging, the body is changing, okay? That's a relative level. Now, the object, what I call the objects of ignorance, or the residues, the samsara, the samskara, the vasanas, they are part of the configuration of the body-mind. So when we talk about that, we talk already of the relative level, right? Of the level of duality. And then, just as the body evolves over time, and the mind evolves over time, these samsaras, or these vasanas, or samskaras, leave the body, right? So there is a natural purification of the body that happens on the relative level. This purification is not different from any changes that occur in the body.
Are those vasanas things that temporarily take consciousness into identification with objects, or just like momentarily, or depending upon the vasana?
They take the body and the mind to a state which is similar to states that were experienced through the body-mind under ignorance. Because it is not that the body-mind is subjected to ignorance. You see, that's a misconception. It's that consciousness chooses to play the game of ignorance through a body-mind.
And it has kind of,
And
through ignorance, it created programs or
with
tendencies in the body-mind.
yes,
that
of course, so the repetition, yeah. It creates a repetitive pattern that remain alive because the body-mind has been programmed through this repetition. But when we say that, we are talking about the level of the body-mind aging, of cause and causation, evolution in time, which I call the relative level.
Mm-hmm.
It's a common source of misunderstanding on this path to the mixing of the levels. So it's very important when we ask ourselves a question to ask ourselves, is the question about consciousness or is it about the body-mind? You see, that's discrimination.
So, maybe this is a different question.
No, it's interesting. It's an important. It's a good question that is often not raised.
So, it becomes, with this meditation that we do, it becomes utterly clear, if it wasn't before, at least to me, that everything is going on and I'm aware of it. Consciousness is aware of whatever it is that's going on, and I see at times an attempt to do something, and I'm saying, okay, well, there's just another vasana or whatever it is, or not a vasana, but it's another tendency, and that also is noticed. So, like, there's nothing that needs to be done.
During this meditation, no. During life, yes.
But it seems to have, to some degree, have continued during life.
Yeah, the state of the body-mind.
I mean, the fact that there's
nothing to do? No.
Nothing to do as consciousness.
Yes, no, because what we do as consciousness during this thing is meditation. That's what we do. But when this activity that lasts for, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, is over, there is life. We need to make a living. We have relatives, we have friends, we have strangers we meet. We have the flowers, the spring, the snow, whatever. We have all of that. And that requires activities. That's the fun. And it's not just to be passive.
I know, but awareness really isn't passive. Passive is something that's relative to active, whereas consciousness is just what happens to be what it is. And
absolutely.
And it's not passive work.
That includes your thoughts.
Right.
And the decisions. And the activities.
I guess I'm still under the incorrect understanding that there's, for my experience is one of silence or maybe peacefulness or whatever, that's not involved necessarily with what is going on.
Not necessarily, but you cannot exclude the involvement of the body-mind as a vehicle or as an instrument of truth. What I call the right action or the ethical decision. That's a story I sometimes tell about William Samuel. He was into this group, Christian Science, and they were having their celebration or meeting, and one of the attendees had a cardiac problem, and everybody was kept meditating. He was the only one with a physician who was there attending to the guy. And then he thought, there is something wrong with this, you know. Why just do this meditation and when something requires activity in the world, you know?
I understand that. I've heard the story. I understand what your point you're making, but there would be, I would contrast that with a person who is panicking and anxious and worried and about the person who is sick, to one who is
impersonal, yes.
That is continuing to act, but,
yes,
but not over, I want to use the word overshadowed.
It's impersonal action, yes.
And that's why I'm thinking that, so is that what you mean by peace when you, it's sort of a continuous something, nothing, I don't know, that is there, that's always been there, but is been overlooked. Or maybe I'm just looking, you know my background as having been in TM and having meditated for a long time with TM and having experienced very subtle things, and so I'm just wanting to be sure that I'm not just simply experiencing a subtle experience, which is peaceful, that is, it appears to be non-changing, it appears to be real. When I say appear, I don't mean visually or sensorially. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's okay. It's sort of a curiosity, really. I'm very happy, and thank you for all these years. It's been very helpful. Thank you.
No, I mean, this meditation like that as an exercise, you can do it. I do it from time to time, but it's not something that. There was a period when I would wake up at 5 in the morning, you know, do 45 minutes of meditation, then I would do pranayama for 30 minutes, and then yoga for 30 more minutes, and I would go to work. I don't do that any longer, right? I would say that at that time, all this thing was kind of, it was impersonal activity. It was a cooperation with the liberation of the body-mind from the Vasanas. It accelerates the process, certainly. it's not absolutely necessary. Ultimately, who cares? You know, even ignorance is not a problem ultimately.
But at some point, did you notice that when you understood the reality of what you are, that was always present, but overlooked? In other words, it's sort of like it was ever present, but you just completely overlooked it.
It manifests over time as a body and a mind which are free from vasanas. Instantaneously after a glimpse, the vasanas are temporarily kind of set aside. In the beginning, they come back right away, almost right away. Over time, they stay away for longer and longer. So the body-mind experiences longer moments of this relieved, what I call relieved state when there are no problems, you're happy for everything. You see, I am in the morning, I'm happy about the roses, you know, and I go, I cut, you know, and they are not going to last. But when they go away in a few days, my happiness, you know, is not going to go with them. You know, there will be something else. You see, so it is not required. Let's put it. Happiness is not something that needs to be acquired. All that is required is the elimination of the party poopers. Now, there is a party pooper in chief, which is eliminated during the ignorance. And there is the party poopers that are were dependent upon the party pooper in chief, which are the vasanas. And these ones, they gradually fade away. That's my experience. The desire to constantly seek and experience consciousness comes from ignorance. Because it assumes that that which is now being experienced is not consciousness yet.
So initially one has a glimpse, but it isn't necessarily a glimpse that everything is consciousness. It's a glimpse that
that consciousness is real, yes.
That is real. The next stage or step, or maybe it doesn't progress that way, is to recognize that everything is consciousness, including the objects of perception, the thoughts, etc. I'm interested in that.
Okay, yes. Immediately after the glimpse, it is obvious that everything is consciousness. However, then the vasanas come back. This period where everything is consciousness, where it's obvious that everything is consciousness, that which a kind of makes it disappear, it doesn't disappear, it's just that the vasanas come back and veil it. After each glimpse, because the glimpse is a revelation of the reality of consciousness, which is the reality of everything. So everything that appears is not separate, distinct from that. But then, in this thing, the vasanas start reappearing and apparently hide consciousness.
And you're
there is a, if you will, a transition from, but which is gradual, from avidya to maya, from ignorance to, yes, there is a world, there is the display of the magician, right? And then it's enjoyable in that sense, when you know it's just the display of the magician, or it's just a movie. But for instance, people think that if we are established in our true nature, that if the body is in pain, we don't experience pain. That's I could see my teacher being in pain or being sick, and yeah, we have little insects here.
Yes.
I don't know where they come from. I guess they're from the plants. We have so many green plants here that, yeah, so there is a dialogue of Ramana Maharshi with one of, reported by one of his students. I have read that somewhere. How are you feeling? And he said, yeah, I have pain.
So the realization is really a deep understanding of that everything is consciousness. Right?
Yes. Yes. That everything is consciousness. And that as a result of that, the fear of mortality disappears. That's one consequence. And the other consequence is that we are diluted in the totality. So the other consequence is love, if you will. We are everybody, we are everything. We are not separate. And then we can play with that, even if it seems not to be the case. We can bet that it is the case and act as if it was the case, and then we see the outcome of this bet. As a result of the Vasanas coming less and less, the body-mind finds its natural state. But here again, the natural state of the body-mind doesn't mean Mr. or Mrs. Perfect as a body-mind. There might be physical issues, you might be. But the psychological charge is not there. For instance, things that would have aggravated you a long time ago, they don't aggravate you any longer. People who would have aggravated you, you find a patience with them. You are interested kind of in them. You want to help them the best you can. And you find that interesting to do that. You see? Other people say, oh, this person is boring, I don't want to. This person is terrible, this person is a liar, this person is not straightforward, this person, right? But we have to accept the the humanity, you know, with the flaws and the apparent imperfections, because they are there for us as challenges to test our this desire for a different state is a Vasana itself. What is now is perfect.
It's true, but it seems like I'm experiencing a different state as you look over my past. It seems like
it's less Vasanas, right?
Okay.
Yeah, of course. And that's a state of the body-mind. Yeah. Of course.
Just on a continuation of that, I wanted to give an example of, so let's say, we are in a night dream where there is the mountains, the rivers, there are other people, there is property, there is family, spouse, children. So it is an entire dream universe. And then when you wake up from this dream world, you wake up to this waking state. And now in this waking state, I know without any doubt, with absolute certainty, that this entire dream universe was nothing other than me. It is so obvious, absolutely certain. So I'm wondering whether it is the same when one wakes up from this waking state to the Turiya, the consciousness of who we are, the waking state with all the waking universe will be exactly the same way, knowing that it is me, it's consciousness alone. You know that everything that we are seeing right now is nothing but a projection of consciousness.
Well, it doesn't make sense to ask the question, would it be different if a glimpse hadn't happened? Because that's a purely hypothetical question. The fact is the glimpse had happened, which has brought about a change in the universe. So obviously, things are different as a result. There has been an injection of wisdom, sacredness, whatever, in the universe, every time that happens. So that implements a change in the universe, if that's the question.
No, I mean, what I meant to say is that I know right now if I look at my dream, whatever I have dreamt, right, somehow I know that it was nothing other than me, other than the waking mind. Because it was nothing other than, because it was the waking mind that has created everything.
Yeah.
And in the same way, when one wakes up from this waking world, would the realization be that everything right now that we experience is nothing but a projection of consciousness itself?
Yeah, immediately after the glimpse, yes. And then if I continue your metaphor, it's like you fall asleep again. And but for a while, the sense of relief that you experience, let's say you woke up from a nightmare, right?
Yeah.
And you fall asleep again, the nightmare is not really there, right? Something has happened. So and every time you wake up, if you have a nightmare, it wakes you up, let's put it this way,
Right.
more quickly. And remember that the natural condition of all beings is the absence of separation. It's a mistake to reverse the order of this and to believe that separation is a natural state and the absence of separation is something that occurs from time to time. So, in fact, the natural state is the absence of separation.
Right. So separation in the sense that there is nothing separate between you and me, between everyone else, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's constantly there
Yes.
unless we believe that it's different.
Right. Yeah, so what happens to me is when I look at consciousness, when I look at awareness, I see no separation. I mean, that is so obvious. And when I look outside, I know it is nothing but consciousness itself, one can say, but you know, it is that it is me, you know, that it is nothing other than me, just like in the once wakes up, he knows that the trees.
Well, when you say that it is me,
Yes.
the me you refer to, when you feel that what
Yes.
is outside is not me, it means because what you feel is me at this moment is the body.
Yes,
is-
exactly. Yes, yeah, there is, and that is the residues of the vasanas.
and you would like to feel whatever is outside like you feel your body.
As me, yes.
Yeah,
As
but
me.
like you feel your body, having the same intimate connection with it as you seem to have with your body.
Exactly.
And that's a mistake because that's a reversal of the order. In fact, when you were born, you had the same intimate connection with the world as you had with your body.
Mm.
The preference for your body is an acquired taste.
Yeah, so I'll give you another example, like for instance, the snake and the rope, right, which is a very famous example. So when the snake or when the rope is seen, the snake vanishes. That is the
It has never been
key.
there.
It's never been there. So the analogy given there is when we see consciousness as it is, the world vanishes. All you see is just nothing but consciousness alone. The world as we see it right now is non-existent.
You know, there is a lot in semantics in this. First, because the word vanishes may refer to two different things. One may be that in the moment of a glimpse, there are no perceptions, so the world vanishes. Right? That's one, and that's true. Because there are no, in the moment without perception, there is no world. Then the world reappears. So the world has vanished, but the world is still, has reoccurred, if you will. But then the world vanishes, then the proper formulation would be the separation, the belief that the world is not me.
Correct.
Is no longer there,
Correct. Yes.
right? And then some vasanas reoccur. For instance, the thought, the world is not me, right?
Yeah.
Or I am afraid. Some reactions from the past that were dependent upon the belief of separation resurfaces, and then suffering seemingly resurfaces, and the striving for something else. And then we experience suffering and we feel, oh, I am off-roading. And then we go back to the glimpse and that disappears. So immediately after the glimpse, if you call the glimpse Nirvikalpa, immediately after the glimpse, when the word appears, we are in sahaja. Is that then, as soon as the first Vasanas comes in, then we leave. It's that we begin, it's like we are falling asleep after waking up, indulging in the image we had before. We go back to the dream, we feel that nice or whatever, right? And then at some point we forget we are dreaming. You see, but for a while, we know that these thoughts, this imagination, we still know we are awake, we are daydreaming in a sense. And then we forget we are dreaming. Then we are completely. So, but all these analogies are.
Yeah, there is some. Yeah, I know there are limitations to those.
Limitations. But often there is a nostalgia for a state of being. Experiencing consciousness as a feeling, as a feeling of intimacy we have with our body, as a feeling we had of a samadhi after a glimpse.
Actually, let me explain also. It is, for instance, now, we know this I, which is absolutely certain, right? The I am is so absolutely certain. And that same degree of certainty, where I know that this world that I see, every experience that I see, is nothing but this I alone, because I alone exist. It's nothing but this I am. With that certainty, in every experience.
Sometimes with this story of the world as a dream, it's not a sufficient metaphor, because the non-existence of the world has to be kind of balanced with another view, which is the reality of the world and the illusory quality of the perceptions. Otherwise, we fall into some kind of idealism where we see the thoughts, the perceptions are more real than consciousness. So, for instance, that's perhaps a problem of the Vedantic approach, is that they insist very much on the world being like a dream. In the Tantric approach, it's different. What we see, when we see Shakti, we see Shiva. You see, there is this thing. The world is real as reality, as consciousness. And otherwise, there is this tendency to say, oh, I see that that's not real. And at that moment, we move away. You see, if we say, okay, no, that's just a dream, we move away. No, that's not a dream. That's Shiva appearing as Shakti, but that's not a dream. You see, it's important. So we need to use both. The world is real, right? The world is Brahman. And also, the world is an illusion, right? And it's in the various shlokas of the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, there is one that says, look at this world as all the things the world as being seen in a dream. So that's the Vedantic approach, right? But it balances out as, seeing the world as Shiva. So
it's an extension.
you need both. Otherwise, if you see just the world as a dream, you move away, and perhaps a tendency of being passive, or it doesn't matter, it's not real, it's an illusion. I go back to my consciousness, I go back to, and
So even when we see this world as a dream, the connection to reality, we can't lose this connection to reality, right? Because we have to be able to see this reality in this dream.
yeah, well, and at least we have to bet that it is consciousness that we
Yes,
see.
yes,
You see,
yeah.
in order to balance out, this remaining tendency of it's. That's something that Atmananda Krishna Menon is very clear about it. He's very clear about it. It's much less clear in India in more traditional Advaita. Everything from the Shankara tradition, they are more into this view of the world is an illusion, don't get involved with it, that's withdraw from the senses, and then the senses are a problem,